Welcome back to the Yoga Chat. I'm your host, Montana.
I am your host, May, and today we're very excited to have Saffron's mom on the show. Let's be
Yes.
real here.
Right.
Saffron's mom is on the show, and if you don't know who Saffron's mom is, her name is Lydia Kilian, and she teaches with Montana and myself at Yoga Six. She is from Maine, but now lives in Pittsburgh. She's been practicing yoga for 15 years. And a fun fact about her is that she won a concerto competition in high school and got to perform a piano concerto with a live orchestra, which doesn't think is cool, but is really fucking cool. Welcome,
Hey.
Saffron's mom.
Thank you. I love that introduction.
That's
We're
the
so
important thing.
yeah.
Saffron's way cooler than I am already, so I'd rather be introduced through her.
When I see Saffron in your videos, I think she's just literally a little John. She like the way she acts even, like she has like a super expressive face and she seems goofy and silly. I don't know. I That video you just posted where she was like
On your belly. I'm pausing it. One sec.
That's okay because
No, it's fine.
the video you
We're not going to
posted of
pretend. The Wi-Fi Gatorade is in the microwave today, apparently, and our Wi-Fi is working with us. So yeah. All right, we're gonna get back on track. May was just talking about Lydia posting a video of Saffron.
yes, just she was wearing her underbelly practicing yoga and Saffron. It was I don't know, I think maybe I just have like weird baby fever right now, but like it was so cute to me that I watched it like 10 times just because she was so like genuinely happy to be like on your belly, like hanging out, doing yoga with you. And this we'll talk about it more, but I really love the way you incorporate her into your yoga practice instead of making it like it's a hindrance. And I think that the business you started about like kind of incorporating yoga as a family thing rather than just like a solo thing, because it can be both. You really like model it beautifully where like you don't let, having a young child run around like hinder your yoga practice. And I just really liked watching. It was really wholesome to see that you guys were like spending that time together. It made me happy.
yeah, I mean her facial expressions were like that smile at the end was just so
Hmm.
funny. So
Hmm.
yeah, she loves yoga. It's been great. She's got quite a few yoga poses down already. And she will like just pull out any of my yoga stuff, like my blocks or my mat, and be like, yoga, mommy, yoga. So it's like she like tells me I need to do yoga now.
Good. So
So
you were always interested in kid
wait,
friendly
wait,
yoga and
before
family
we
yoga.
forget. Big three, we
What?
always forget. The big three, we always
The
forget.
big three, the Mercuries and the
Oh,
Gatorade and the
and I
microwave or whatever. What is your big three?
well, the funny thing is I always forget. So I'm like, I need to look this up before. So it's like also shows about my personality because I'm like, I need to plan to be ready. Um, so yeah, my I know my sun is Scorpio, and then moon is Aries, and rising is Virgo.
That
Okay.
tracks.
I know like
Yes.
I don't know like tons about astrology and stuff, so I know like a lot about, my sun sign, but not so much about the other two. So I don't know. Do those make sense?
I don't know a whole
Yeah,
lot either, but I'm gonna say yes.
I don't know a whole lot either, but I'm gonna say yes because Aries is where you get your like fiery, I don't know. It's also very balanced. Um, earth, air, fire, right?
Earth,
Um,
water, fire, I think.
Scorpio is not water. Everyone thinks it's water because it's like Scorpio, but it's
I always thought Scorpio was fire.
I always thought it was
Scorpio's
no.
fire
not air.
too. Yeah, which one is? I think it's water. Isn't it water?
I think Scorpio's water,
Oh, I'm thinking about Aquarius. Aquarius, everyone always thinks it's water and it's not.
but it's air. Yeah.
Listen to how
Yes.
smart we are. Okay, the beginning of this episode is all over the place. And for those of you listening, for what it's worth, it is Christmas Eve while we're filming,
Yep.
so give us a break, okay?
We're in our pajamas. My family just walked in and
Clearly
there's
we
going to be a bunch of dogs barking in the background for like 10 minutes. I'm going to mute for a moment.
So let's reel it back a little bit. But Lydia, we've already talked a lot about you and your different passions and talents and stuff. So can you give us a sort of just like let us know, let the listeners know who you are and where you come from, your background, and all the different avenues that you are a part of.
Yeah. Um, all right, let's see, where do I start? So I guess I'll begin with my musical background. So I grew up kind of training as a pianist, and I always thought I would like be a college professor basically, or like, make a career out of being a professional pianist. So I did my undergraduate in piano performance. And when I was doing that, just realized like I like am interested in many things and just struggled with like being so as focused as you had to be on at that one thing, and ended up like doing a dual degree in international affairs. And during that time, I studied abroad twice and just like kind of got the like travel bug, and really just like in that coursework, just like enjoyed learning about just random things. And so I studied in Buenos Aires and then I went to Florence. And so I just was realizing like I really enjoyed traveling and wanted to do more of that. And so then I ended up doing the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Thailand. So during my, I'll just kind of backtrack. During my piano performance degree, you have to do like these big performances, like recitals that are like an hour long of memorized music. And I was feeling a lot of performance anxiety. And so that's really when I started getting into meditation. And I also started getting into yoga. Like yoga was first, and then eventually um, I got into meditation. And it was really through meditation that I just learned so much about myself, and learned so much that I was like, this is really helping me like as a performer as well as just in general in life. So it was really cool that I ended up in Thailand, where meditation is just like part of the culture. Like kids meditate. That's like a word that is used often. People go to temples all the time and do different sorts of meditation. So when I was there, I was teaching English. So I was at a school teaching and living with a host family, so a local Thai family, and that was just an incredible experience. Also very challenging, as you would imagine. And I that's when I really developed my personal yoga practice and my meditation practice. And I remember reading a meditation book and just learning about this idea of like mental noting and just like noticing different things that are happening and trying not to take it any further than that observation, just noticing without any judgment, which was really what I needed to learn at the time, living in such a different culture where I was always feeling like I needed to compare how things were there and how things were the way I was used to, like here in the West. And um, just kind of learning that they can both coexist and one doesn't have to be better than the other or even compared to, and they can both just exist at the same time. So I really got into meditation and the philosophy behind it. And I did my first meditation retreat there. So like a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And when I did that, I will say I felt like the most peace I've ever felt in my whole life from just like not talking and just meditating for like solid 10 days. Um, and then I got, yeah, so that was kind of my journey there. I mean, my main focus was on teaching, but this is more related to where I am now. So when I came back, I kind of was struggling to figure out what I wanted to do next, because I've always, I still was interested in music and was kind of like figuring out my place with music, as well as knowing I wanted to keep developing my yoga practice. And so I ended up teaching English online. And then the next year I went to India and did my yoga training. So that was before that, it was just like a personal thing. I practiced yoga on my own. So then I did my yoga teacher training. And when I came back, started teaching. I was in Florida at the time. So I was teaching at a studio there. So that's when I started getting into um, to teaching yoga. And I did another meditation retreat. So I just kind of like kept up with that. But I feel like that I'm mentioning that because it really like I infuse that into my yoga teaching and my own practice. And then again, I was like kind of exploring where music still fit into my life. So I ended up deciding to do a master's degree in arts management. So that's what brought us to Pittsburgh. So I went to CMU, to Carnegie Mellon, and did my master's in arts management. So I wanted to kind of just get a little bit more like practical skills to go along with the really intensive training I had done musically, artistically. So I had always been teaching music. So I've been teaching music since I was in high school. So I've been teaching music, and then I taught English in the Peace Corps, so been teaching yoga. So I've noticed like this wasn't really intentional, but like there's been a thread line of teaching through my whole life. And when I was doing my degree, my master's, I realized I really missed teaching music. So I started teaching at a local music school here, Kathy's Music in Pittsburgh. And I was teaching piano, but they also offer kinder music. So I quickly realized I wanted to do the kinder music training and start teaching that because it really aligned with kind of where I had moved with teaching music, which was away from like really intensive training like of pianists to become like professional pianists and more of like a whole child development, like viewing it really holistically, where music fits in and strengthens all these other qualities and characteristics of a child that can help them thrive in the future, which is really what kinder music's about. So I did that and just have been really impressed with the program there and was like, wow, maybe this is what I could see myself doing in the future. Um, Especially as I was doing like a management degree. And so then in that second year, I took a class that was all on entrepreneurship and building a business plan. And through that, I kind of this idea of my current business I've established in Harmony Arts and Wellness. I wanted to fuse kind of all these things that I do, my background all together. And I work with adults, I work with children, and I started to just um, kind of observe like what I noticed at the music school. I noticed a lot of parents, dropping their kids off and just kind of waiting for their child to be done and then taking another child to another activity. So this like running around, and also then I started teaching at Yoga 6 and noticing parents coming in there, and it just like there's this disconnect where the parent is doing their own thing or trying to fit in some self-care for themselves. Um, I'm trying to like bring that together in what I'm doing now. So currently I am teaching at Yoga 6 and at Kathy's Music, so those two things. And then on my own, I'm trying to like create some online digital content that's geared towards families. So kind of like I was saying, like bringing everything together, so activities like some family yoga that families can do together, as well as like short practices that are geared towards parents and like what they need to realistically be able to fit in a practice. My goal is to have a physical space like way down the road, and that probably won't be here in Pittsburgh, but this is kind of like my starting point, and I'm excited to kind of see where it grows and yeah, it continues to go.
I have like 8 billion questions because I
Me-
love everything that you do. The first question is the 10-day silent
Yes, I was going to ask the
meditation
same
retreat.
question.
That I don't think there are many people on earth that have experienced a 10-day period of time where they didn't speak. So, can you tell us a little bit more about it? Like, did you just wake up every day and you meditated, but like nobody spoke to each other the whole time? Like, you were just completely quiet, not one word was uttered?
So as a participant, yeah, you don't speak at all. Like
Oh
people
my
don't
God.
even like really look at each other. I mean, because you're trying to like just totally cut off those senses. You do like hear got some guided meditations, and so I've done two of them. One of them was Vipassana meditation, so like insight meditation in Thailand. The other one was also the same style, but it was specifically Gwenka, if you've heard of that. If anyone is ever interested, I would definitely look into that because they're like free 10-day meditation retreats you can do, or you can your first time is free and then it's just like donation based, and they're actually all over the
Mm.
world. So Gwenka was like a monk, and I believe he was Burmese, but he's like all over there's places all over the world. That one's a little bit more strict in that it's like all seated meditation. And then the other one I did, there was a combination of like walking meditation as well. And you do other things like you help clean and like are viewing that as part of the meditative practice. Um, it's like really everything you're doing, eating meals is part of the meditative practice. Oh, and you only have like 2 meals a day. And I remember that was what I was most nervous about actually, because like I need to eat a lot. And I was like, only 2 meals a day. Oh, and you get up at like 5, and I'm not a morning person. And you get up like before the sun rises. So it was,
When you left that and went back out into like the world, were you just hyper like overwhelmed by noise again? Like, did you get to a point where you felt so used to the silence that when you went back in, you were like, oh my God, the world is insane?
I don't like remember that. I think there's definitely like a sense of relief when it's done.
Yeah.
Like, because it's just like your mind is like, can I do this the
Yes.
whole time? And you're like,
Yeah.
I have to leave. I can't do this. And then you're like, no, I feel like relaxed, and it's like this back and forth the whole time. Um, I'm sure there was. And especially like my first one, because I was like existing in another country where it was like
Mhm.
such a different language. And so just like communicating moment to moment was such a challenge, um, that it was like such a relief to like not have to do that and like have use that brain power all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but I can't like remember specifically feeling like it was overwhelming or anything.
I don't think I
Mm.
could
Person.
physically not speak for 10 minutes or for 10 days. I mean, 10 minutes and 10 days. But I love that, like, you could be so much more hyper aware of, like you said, even the food you're putting in your mouth or the way it feels to, like, clean a dish in a kitchen or walk or because it it we talk and we are so wordy and we listen and we talk and we listen and we talk and we listen. I can't really even imagine doing life for a day without speaking to anybody and how much more you would notice and like observe about what you're doing without that part.
Yeah, right. You realize like how much there is like I mean, you just become so much more aware of everything else when
Hmm.
you take away that
Absolutely.
ability or that sense of talking. Yeah.
And then my other, well, I have millions of questions. I'll let Montana hop in whenever she wants. If she's, do you want to ask her anything about her meditation that I missed?
Feel like the next question, we're going to ask the same thing. You're the first person we've had on here that has done their teacher training in India. So please tell us about it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did like a month long, kind of intensive. It was in Rishikesh where there's a lot of different yoga schools. So I did that because I love traveling and I love like the whole experience and the tradition behind yoga. And that was what was really neat, is getting to like go to the Ganga River and like see different like ceremonies and just like, I don't know, these traditions in action, like people living it. Um, I think when people ask me about it, one of the things that a lot of people kind of have this idea, think that because I went to India, it was going to be like really strict. And I actually feel like it was like way less strict than the way many people are trained in the States. So I didn't have like, I don't feel like my yoga training was like super intense in the physical practice. So,
Asana.
or
Yeah.
Sanskrit, like we didn't even have to use Sanskrit. There were different people from different, it was all from people from different countries. And so like we actually didn't use Sanskrit. They didn't care how we like, it was in English, and there was like language barriers for some people and they didn't care. or like ujjayi breath. Like they said in my training, like the teacher thought ujjayi breath is kind of overdone in the West because it tends to be like very pressed, and it's supposed to just be to like build awareness and just kind of keep you relaxed. And so we didn't do any ujjayi breath, I would say. It was a hatha training. We did like a lot of Iyengar. It wasn't Iyengar, but it was Iyengar inspired in that we used a lot of props, like straps on the walls, and a lot of like it wasn't like a lot of training and hands-on assists per se, like we talk about in the West, but it was a lot of using hands-on with each other and just being able to like feel the different poses and like your edge in a different pose. But what I was going to say that's interesting is the way it was more intense is in a lot of the other practices. So some of the like cleansing practices. So we all did I can't even, it's so funny because at Yoga 6, we don't use Sanskrit. And I feel like I can't remember a lot of the terms now for a lot of these things. But a lot of is it like Shat Karma, like the cleansing practices? So like we all did like neti, like we had our own like neti pots and we're all outside like doing that. And then we did the cleansing technique where you like purposefully throw up. So it's to cleanse like your um digestive system. So basically we like drank salt water and then we all like threw up. um and like we're just like outside and with like, you know, the mountains in the background and we're just like doing these
Grown up.
techniques. Or and then the hardest one was I can't remember the name of it, where you take like the thread, you like put it up your nose and then it comes through your mouth and you like floss. I like couldn't do it. I was like, I don't know, some people
That's
were doing it.
crazy.
Oh,
So like it's funny because I'm like, oh, it wasn't intense, but then I'm like, well, we did do some of this stuff. Like it was
it's
it was
intense.
like a little bit more in terms in some of the other ways. But
How long was it? Like, what was the schedule like?
so it was a month, I believe. I think it was a month. And then it was, I believe, 6 days a week. I think we had one day totally off. And so that was, you know, fun to just go explore. Or we might have had a little bit that day. And it was like we would wake up, have a practice first thing in the morning, um, have, and then it was like, you know, blocked off with like philosophy and then anatomy classes. And then we'd have another evening practice. So it was pretty much like 6 days, like 6 full days of mostly practicing. And then you'd have like a couple hour break in the middle. Um, and it's nice because it's like you're staying there and they give you they provide you with food, and it was like amazing food. And Rishikesh is really interesting. The whole city is vegetarian. So like you can't actually have meat there.
Wow.
I was vegetarian at the time, so it was great because you don't have to worry about it. Um, so and but the food is amazing. And um yeah, and then like I got to go to like an Ayurvedic doctor there, and like just, you know, all these things you learn about in training are just like they're part of the culture, which is was really neat. So you could like take advantage of just really taking all that in.
Um, it's funny you mentioned like how it wasn't very strict in terms of asana and Sanskrit and stuff like that because as a yoga teacher in the West, I feel like other yoga teachers in the West tell you what you're supposed to do or what's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, but like it's kind of like they're taking their own interpretation of what yoga is supposed to be and they're telling everybody that they're doing it right or wrong, but also they're still yoga teachers in the West. So like it's interesting to hear your experience there and how Sanskrit wasn't um it just wasn't so heavily like encouraged or it wasn't something that they thought made or break makes or break what sharing yoga is. So
Right.
I feel less guilty about not speaking Sanskrit in class now.
Well, I know, and it's funny because a lot of people, I think, especially when I started at Yoga 6, were kind of like, you did your training in India. Like, this seems like a lot of it might not, I don't know, fit. And I'm like, it makes a lot of it makes sense to me because some of the things that are often pushed, yeah, here in the West in yoga were like not emphasized so much there. And it wasn't like they discouraged Sanskrit, and like we
Right.
definitely learned about like the idea of different um different sounds and tones have meanings like that. It's still, that's still part of it, but that's not like, it's not like you're not practicing yoga by having that, and it wasn't like a central part of the practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reminds
And sorry, go ahead.
It reminds me of what you were talking about, like the two different cultures existing. It's like two things can exist at the same time, and it's not that one is better, not that one is better or worse. And I love what you said that like they don't even need to be compared. Right.
Right.
I
Right.
it's the same thing here, right? It's just two things can exist.
Yeah, that's what's
And
funny to me
that's like,
about.
oh, what were you gonna say, May?
No, 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 you finish.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's like, I feel like that's like a lifelong practice of working on that. And like our culture, especially now, like we're very much about like pitting two things up against one another, and not
Yeah.
not like letting two things exist and be like they can both be true. um
Mhm.
and that is like kind of a different concept, I think, for a lot of people. That was very new for me to think about, and I didn't even know I was doing it, because it's just
Yep.
such a habitual thing. I still find myself doing it. um so yeah, yeah, I think that's like a really profound thing to just kind of reflect on.
Great.
Agreed. I was talking about that recently, just how it seems like a lot of people feel more comfort in the black and the white, just like they want to believe that what they believe is the true thing and the real thing and the right thing. And then they have a really hard time accepting that other true and right and real things can exist that are different from what they believe. Um,
Mhm.
but but yeah, it's just it's hard. I mean, it's hard to be a yoga teacher, but it's hard because it's like no matter it's so hard to be a yoga teacher out here these days. It sounds funny even saying that, but it is like there's a lot of noise and there's like things that, you can't all you can do is show up and be yourself and share the yoga the way that you want to share the yoga. And you can be, empathetic and inclusive and all of these things, but there's always going to be something that like someone will, consider to be wrong about how you're sharing it. And I think after a while, and what's funny is going through, and you've done your 300-hour now, so you're a 500-hour teacher. Going through the 300 hour, I've learned so many things and it's made me a better teacher. But the thing I think I'm getting out of it the most is that like knowledge gives you the power to decide what noise that you want to not listen to anymore. Because it's like just an idea of, I know so many more things now that it's giving me the security to just make the choices that like I'm still going to share yoga the way I feel I want to share yoga, and now I feel like all of this knowledge has given me almost like permission to do that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. And like, uh I mean, kind of circling back to where I am now in my life. So I'm being a parent of a toddler. I think
Mhm.
like parenting is like exactly what you're saying right now. And like that's like parenting, right? Like
Yep.
there's all this noise, all these different
Yep.
opinions, and every child is different, and you learn to do what's best for your child. And that might be different for another family. That might be different for another child within your family. So I
Yeah.
think, and learning, kind of like you're saying, as a yoga teacher, you have to learn to just trust like your intuition, like trust what you feel is best, what works for you. And so just like I think that applies to so many things, but like yeah, parenting is another major one of those things.
Oh, it is. It is. What's funny is we're all on the same side, right? So like all moms, all families, all yoga teachers, we're all trying to do the same thing, which is like raise kind children or share yoga in a safe, inclusive way. And so we're all on this journey trying to do the same things. And I think that it's funny, we're all trying to do the same things, but then, every now and then someone will be like, well, but the way you're doing it isn't as good as the way I'm doing it. So it's just kind of interesting. And yeah, I just think in general, when you're more focused on what you're doing and sharing what you believe in, it's there's less space for you to listen to the noise or offer the noise. You know what I mean? And I think that just comes from a place of security and knowledge. And the more you know, and the more you are tuned into what you truly like feel is right, then it's easier for you to just let the noise cancel out. Um, but I totally get with parenting. The first year of parenting is so hard with just like, you shouldn't use a bottle. You should use a bottle. You should only do this. You should only do that. And it's like, well, how about this doesn't work for me or this doesn't work for her? So we're going to do something different. But yeah, those are tough decisions to make because there is so much noise. The other thing I wanted to ask you, which is something that Montana and I talk about a lot on here and just in life, because we both love music and experience music. Like, I don't play music, but I feel very connected to it. And I always talk about and think about how music and yoga kind of offer the same thing where like you go on this like it's like a meditation in itself. So I'm sure when you play piano, do you feel the same like flow as when you are like practicing on your mat? Is it like can you get to the same place doing both of those things?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't play in the same I'm trying to think back on like when I was playing a lot more. But I would definitely say it's like that, yeah, that flow state where it's like you're losing kind of sense of everything else around you and you're totally there in the moment, right? So I do think it's very similar. And I think, I mean, that's also, so that's kind of like my sub, so, a kind of like sub message in messaging I want in what I'm offering is like these creative practices, because I think it's really like strengthening, like playing music or being artistically like active in any way. So like dance or um, visual arts. I'm also like
Yeah.
really interested in visual arts. I feel the same way like when I go to a museum and I'm just like so totally enthralled in like what I'm looking at and like the way it's making me feel. I think those are all very similar experiences to that state in yoga or in meditation. Even just like view, I like to maybe think of it more as maybe to me like what makes more of a connection and makes more sense rather than thinking so much like yoga in a broad sense um is thinking of it in a more like meditative sense. Like that's what I'm focusing on. That's like my um like my anchor for the purpose of the meditation. So it's like it could be so many things actually in music. Like it could be the feeling in your body as you're playing. It could be like the sound of the music. It could be more emotional as you're listening to the music, but like focusing on that like one, that cultivating one pointedness as we talk about in yoga and like meditation practice. And so I think that's very similar in the arts in general and in yoga and meditation.
It reminds me of that movie Soul, which we've talked about on the podcast before. May, I can't remember. Have you seen it?
No, I still haven't seen it.
Gosh, Lydia, have you seen it?
I
Oh,
haven't seen it.
Lydia, especially because you're a musician, like it is, it's a masterpiece. It's so, and that's something that they show a lot is while he's playing the piano, the way that Pixar can like through animation create that flow state idea, and then they have like it's like almost like the other side. It's like a space before heaven, and like the people that are in that flow state will then meet each other in that like other side. And it's really fascinating. It's exactly what you guys are talking about right now, and how you can find that flow state in lots of different um through lots of different practices, and then through those practices like Lydia, you mentioned, it could be so many different elements, right? That's actually getting you there. Which, I mean, this is kind of a segue, but I'd really love to hear more about like your kinder music teaching and how that has kind of also evolved into teaching, not just with like practicing yoga with Saffron, but also teaching um, kids yoga. And I love that you mentioned before too, like child development through music and yoga. So yeah, I'd love to just hear more about that training and how that fits into your life now, because I know it's a big part of your life and your career.
Yeah. So in kinder music, I'm teaching kids, it's like babies through 6-year-olds, like 6 to 7, split up by um, different, age ranges, so they're not all together. And so through that, I've just learned, and just through the training of it, and then the experience teaching, really seeing like what's typical at just different stages of development. And then you learn in terms of music, like, when they start to feel the beat or can keep the beat, or working on ensemble development, and all of these things um, work work together to develop the child's brain. And like a lot of movement, like, and when children are developing, their brains are developing, movement is like really the key to their development. So that's why like yoga is so important, and like cross lateral movements. So crossing your midline so that you're really developing these like synapses in the brain, which is a lot of different yoga poses, like if you think of like eagle wrap, like that's great for regulating, because you're like physically crossing your midline. So um, it's helping just to like wire the brain. And so there's lots of research on this. And actually, one of my favorite researchers in child development is Dan Siegel, who is a meditation like teacher and researcher as well. So I think that's really fascinating that like his background is in that, as well as he's written like many books on child development. And there's a lot of research on just like the way the brain works, and how you physically need to make certain movements in order to like build the connections in the brain. So um, in kinder music, it's very much movement based as well. So music and movement. And then I also have like separate training in kids yoga. And so I teach, and that's like a separate thing, kids yoga, which is just, mostly movement. And then also like some more like mindfulness and like little breathing exercises and stuff like that. But I really feel like it all fits together, because as a child is developing, movement is just so important. And that's, um, you know, how their brain's developing, but also how you're teaching them certain skills like inhibitory control and like self-control through like stopping and going and activities, and like playing games and learning more um, gross and fine motor control, and um, then just like learning practices to that they can carry with them later, and like can develop and harness as they get older, because they're introduced to them. So like ideas like mindfulness or breathing, like the breathing exercises I think are great, because you can so quickly do those, and they're just very, very quickly help to regulate. And I mean, in my experience, when you say to take a deep breath, children don't really like that. So if you guide them through like a fun activity that does help them to breathe deeply, then it's just more playful, and it might be something that like sticks a little bit more. So I try to incorporate some of those into my kinder music teaching, and then like the things that I've learned through that, like maybe things about like really keeping a strong, steady rhythm and beat, to help regulate. And one popular kids musician and yoga teacher is Kira Wiley, and she does a lot of that, like really um, using beat to help regulate. So maybe doing that as I'm leading. So a lot of like that would be an example of really how to manage the classroom. And a lot of those techniques are going to overlap, because it doesn't matter if you're leading music or movement or yoga, you need to have kind of like, you can use the same toolbox to help manage and regulate your class.
Yeah, it almost sounds like teaching kids has kind of been like your like the gateway to blending all of the things that you love into like one offering. And then on top of that, like talking about the business, like having a studio down the road where parents and kids can come to one place to learn and have fun and take care of themselves. It's just so awesome that you've really like done such an amazing job at figuring out ways to yeah, make all of your passions exist at once, which is so like the theme of this whole episode feels like what you brought up in the beginning about culture, and then what we talked about in terms of teaching yoga, that like so many things can exist at once. And the more things that exist at once, the more beautiful and truly like accessible and inclusive things can be, right? If you had to say, if you had to choose, do you prefer teaching children or adults?
So I like having a mixture, as you can kind of probably tell from like my whole experience of like all the different things I do. Like I said from the beginning, like when I started doing my degree in piano performance, I realized like I can't just focus on this one thing. So I feel like I like that balance of the two. I think it would be hard for me to do just one or the other because I like the playfulness with kids and I like um just the way they're like totally in it and they're not bringing so much else in with them, you know. But then I like working with adults where I can have deeper conversations with them and um just like there's this balance between the two. So I think I really would have a hard time picking one or the other.
Yeah, you're multifaceted, so that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Okay, the last question we always ask everyone, and as you know, since thank you for listening, we've had a every answer under the sun. So, Lydia, do you think yoga can change the world? Yes or no, and why?
Yes, I do. And I think it can a lot of like it can promote things, you know, these shifts in your thinking because yoga is so much is more than just the movement. But that movement is important too because that movement is like also can help to like release things, release emotions, and shift things that will allow like these just kind of like new thought patterns to exist. So I think that the more people that are involved in yoga and practicing yoga, they're able to like shift their mind, become more open-minded and more like let different perspectives exist and heal themselves. I mean, it all starts from within and like the big thing for me with promoting family yoga is I think that I really like want to focus on the parent because you're modeling to your child like this activity. And for me like modeling is like the most important thing. So when you're taking a yoga class or you're doing meditation, like you're showing your child that that's important and that that's like an important skill. It's important to take that time out for yourself to develop that. So it's not like you're just doing it for yourself. You're like showing them actively. And so that I feel like that goes into what you're saying where it's like you're teaching that next generation to do it. And so like my hope is that like the next generation will have that a little bit more like built into their lives. And like back to my background as a musician and when I started learning about meditation, I was kind of like upset. I was like, man, I wish I had known all of this like growing up. Like I feel like I could have been such a better pianist, such a better everything like cuz I would have been so much more focused. I would have known what to do with like all those scattered thoughts going on in my mind, especially like when I was performing or when I would have been like so much more um just focused in the way I prepared and I feel like used my brain power in a better way because I would have just known how to harness my brain. So I think yoga teaches you how to do that. And so it can definitely change the world and hopefully like this the next generation will just have those resources a little bit more at their disposal and so that's why all parents should go do yoga and meditate so that their child sees that's important and then they learn to do it too.
It's the juice. It's like not do as I say, not as I do, but like do as I do.
Right.
Watch what I do, and I'm gonna show you how to do it.
Yeah.
Because
Like, I
that's
feel
what's
like
funny
with
about being a parent is just either telling them to do one thing while you're modeling something completely different.
right. Well, like, for me, I think, like, when Saffron, you know, she's a toddler and she's getting to the point of, like, more resistance for things. So I think like, I like to think about, like, what's happening with me, and if I'm starting to get worked up, like, there's no way she's gonna calm down, and I feel like we expect children to learn to regulate themselves, but oftentimes we're not regulated as adults. So I'm like, well, the
Bingo.
most important thing is that I regulate because then like, there's this idea of co-regulating. She's gonna build off of that, but also she's gonna see me do it. So, like, what I was gonna say is, sometimes I'm like, "Okay, let's take a deep breath," and then I'm like, "Wait, that doesn't do anything for me to say take a deep breath. But if I do it and show her, then she's like seeing it and she can like she's probably going to take something from seeing me do it. And also I'm going to feel better from doing it. Um, yeah. So it's
Totally.
like this idea of just do it yourself, because that's going to have the most impact, I think.
She's lucky to have you. You're a good mom.
Yeah, I've gotten goosebumps multiple times throughout this, but also like I hear so many moms, what you're saying shifts not only like giving moms the permission to take care of themselves, but to the next level. It's like, no, 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 no. By taking care of yourself, you are in turn teaching your child how to take care of themselves, which is exactly what every mom wants to do, right?
Yep.
So it's like so profound and also so obvious. So yeah, shout it from the rooftops, Lydia, because I feel like there's so many moms out there that could benefit so much from like shifting that narrative and recognizing the importance of them taking care of themselves and how that's going to affect their child in a positive way for many generations down the line.
Right. It's just going to keep changing. Like the next
Exactly.
generation is going to, they're going to have things that they're going to be improving upon. And that's like how it should be. Right. So hopefully it'll be like baby steps.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what we talked about with Hannah too, is like not even just kids, but you never know who's watching you or who's inspired by the things that you do to take care of yourself or what you're doing every day. And so sometimes, you might have somebody that looks at you from afar, someone that knew you from years ago that just like sees what you're up to, that maybe inspires them to try something or to better themselves in some way. So if you are even not a parent, or if you don't even have a partner, you're not connected with anybody really closely, like you never know what you do and how it might inspire or affect somebody else. So it's a good reminder that do the things you say you're going to do, and act the way you want people to act, and then maybe you're modeling something that some like might spark a change in somebody else.
Right. I love that. And I need to remember this for myself. I mean, it's hard to take care of
Oh, of
yourself,
course.
So
Yeah.
a lot of times I'm like, I need to take my own advice. So it's just, we're all like doing the best we can. And um, that's, yeah, part of it too, just being like compassionate with yourself and trying to just like keep doing more of it.
Yeah, totally.
The whole
All
other
right,
thing,
cool.
being compassionate with yourself, and then your kids will end up being compassionate with themselves,
Right.
And then
and so on
around,
and so
Right.
forth.
yeah, and everyone else
So
around.
you're modeling through your inner like dialogue, what your talk is like going to become their
Right.
inner voice. So
Yep, exactly.
So, so true. Well, Lydia, is there anything else you want to share before we log off?
no, I'm just happy. Thank you for having me on. This was fun. And
This was really fun.
yeah, hopefully you
You have
guys can
so many
back
things. You've
and
done
do.
so many things. It's, like, amazing.
Oh, thanks. It's like
This was a
fun
great
to kind of go
episode.
back. I feel like I don't always some of the things I mentioned, like the meditation retreats. I haven't actually thought about that in a while. So it was fun to like just kind of like go back to that. But
That's
Remember
to
all the
me is,
things.
like, the most fascinating thing I've ever heard, that, like, just a person from the United States going over and just randomly being like, "I'm gonna do a silent meditation for 10 days." Holy shit.
Twice.
Twice.
well, that's
Uh,
how good it was. I did it again. You would think you do it once and you're like, I would never do that
Y
again. And
yes.
I would do it again for sure now, but that won't be for at least like 18 years. So,
in a
because
very,
now I feel like there would be like a whole nother level of anxiety, like,
Oh,
like
big time.
child, like, I mean, May, you were saying it was hard going on the retreat for a few days, right? And how
Yep,
old? Yeah. Maya's like
and Maya's
12.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't get easier. It probably won't get easier when she's 18 and at college either, but it at least, like, will be physically distanced. But no, um, there's a whole different aspect of doing anything, when you have a kid, just because, like, you can't be away from them and then not be able to speak to them or have a phone call or any of that. But
yeah,
in 18 years, when you go on a 10-day silent meditation, wherever you are in this world or in this life, reach out to me in Montana and maybe we can meet you there. And
We'll
in
all do
our
it together.
overly verbal selves can show up and try our best to not speak for
yeah.
10 days. Might do us some good.
And not to like worry either of you in any way, because it's actually very beautiful. But like we mentioned in the beginning of the episode, it's Christmas Eve, and I am 30 years old. And my mom called me this morning, and we both cried on the phone because we're not together on Christmas. So like it doesn't It doesn't end.
I hope Maya calls me on Christmas Eve when she's 30 and cries that she's not with
I
me. I
did. I
think
was
that's great.
like, I'm leaving the studio and I just had a lot of fun, but I'm just really sad we're not together. Anyway, she made me feel better even at 30. Well, Lydia, before we log off, can you let everyone know where to find you on Instagram and how to look up and find your online content?
Yeah, so you can look me up on Instagram or YouTube on the handles In Harmony Arts and Wellness, all just spelled out. So yeah, I would love for you to follow my subscribe to the YouTube channel and like leave me any feedback if there's things that are, like on your mind or things you want to see. Because I know like everyone's like parents are all in experiencing different things, needing different things. So um, I feel like I'm coming at it from like what I feel as a parent, but I love to hear what everyone else is experiencing and
Yeah,
feeling.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Lydia. This was so special, just like we knew it would be. Merry Christmas, you two. This will air after Christmas, so Happy New Year, everyone listening. um, but yeah, thanks, and thanks for everyone that listened. Reach out to Lydia if you are interested in any of the things that she talked about, because like you now know, she's multifaceted with lots of talents and skills. And
Yeah. And if you're not interested in any of those things, you're dead inside
yeah,
because there's a lot to be interested in here.
if you've made it this far in the episode, you definitely should reach out to Lydia. All right. Well, thank you, friends. Merry Christmas.
Well, thank you. Bye.
Bye.